arises from ego and arrogance, and it all started with Satan.
Islam wants us to have healthy relationship, healthy social interaction.
I can't breathe is now a way of actually experiencing. And what would it be like to be choked? What would it be like to be not to be able to breathe?
The death of George Floyd sparked protests in cities across the US and many parts of the world.
It's just another murder that's been caught on film, but millions of people are murdered for their race everywhere around the world.
When all lives are valued equally, then all lives will matter.
Forms of racial prejudice is unacceptable.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Sheikh, the feeble-minded is one who spends his money senselessly and squanders it on pointless matters. Can such individuals buy and sell?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. One of the preconditions of the buyer and seller is to make sure that the individual is not feeble-minded or safih. You cannot give your money for somebody who has no clue to what to do with this money. He doesn't understand what the money is. It's like a 2-year-old kid. You give him a £50 note. I mean, they don't know what to do with it. They might even destroy it, throw in the bin, for example, and so forth. So when it comes to buying and selling, both sides must be sane and in a condition that they can actually communicate and buy and sell. To be sane, that's important.
I see. Sheikh, a mosque, sometimes is made of bricks and also other timber, other materials and so forth. Are we allowed to purchase? Can they be sold? These bricks, these timber, this material used to build a mosque, can they be sold?
If the permission is given by the trustees of the mosque, then there is no issue with it, and they can change it with better ones. Let's say if they want to refurbish the building, renovate and so forth, they can actually get better ones, better material instead of the old ones.
Sheikh, in the Ramadan, some of us cannot fulfill the full fast and we have Qadar fast. For example, maybe one of us travelled on a day which we couldn't refrain from, or we weren't feeling well, and so forth, and we had to perform the Qadar. Is it mandatory for us to perform the Qadar straight after Eid al-Fitr? Or is there a time limit and we can begin? Maybe we were fasting in the summer. Maybe we want to wait till the winter time where the days are a little bit shorter and not easier for us to repay our fast and so forth. Is this allowed, or do we do it straight away after Eid al-Fitr? We have to fulfill our Qadar prayers, our Qadar fasts.
It's not mandatory and wajib to perform the Qadar of the month of Ramadan straight after Eid al-Fitr. However, you have up to the forthcoming month of Ramadan for the coming year to make sure that by the end of Sha'ban of the following year you have fulfilled your Qadar, whatever you missed. And of course, the one can take the opportunity, as you mentioned, to fast in the winter, where the daytime is short and you have longer hours of night. There's also a hadith in this regard from Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam. He stated, "As-sawmu fi ash-shita هو الغنيمة الباردة. Fasting in winter is a cold spoil or a cold gain anyhow, that you're actually benefiting from fasting in the winter when the weather is cold and you don't feel fast, you don't feel that severe thirst or hunger, for example. So it's better off to basically make up your qada if you want to in winter time, where it's quicker, easier, especially if there are holidays within the winter time. You can be at home and basically having those days of fast qada as well fulfilled, inshallah.
Ahsan. Sheikh, according to His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, if I cover a broken nail with a plaster or some sort of cover for healing purposes, how do I perform my wudu and ghusl? Is it allowed for me to use the plaster then, or do I have to remove the plaster and not wear it because it impedes my wudu and ghusl?
The Sayyid mentions that the wudu and ghusl must be without any types of cover. I mean, they must remove all these covers of nail and such like. Otherwise, the wudu and ghusl would not be accepted and invalid. In this case, they have to remove it and be able to do the wudu and ghusl. And what has been mentioned is not justifiable. We can't, because of beautification, you apply all and wear all these, let's say, artificial nails and so forth, and unremovable nails in somehow, where you have to keep them for a long time. That will prevent the wudu and ghusl, so they must be removed. Yes, what is allowed is the splint, the wounds,
yes,
where you can have the plasters and so forth, in which you do ghusl or wudu jabira. You wipe on it gently on the place of wound where there's a plaster, clean plaster, then you can do so. But for beautification, no, it's not exempted. No.
I see. Excellent. Check out some questions from the WhatsApp from our viewers. Let's get right to it. What is the ahkam on investing in digital currencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc.? Please advise. Thanks. We had discussed this before, Sheikh,
exactly,
but for the viewer, I think it's acceptable. Apart from, was it Sheikh Ishaq al-Fiyad who had the fatwa?
I believe so. Yeah.
That said that.
I mean, in overall, if the trade is according to the Sharia in terms of buying and selling, it's like a stock exchange. If it's in this type of business, then it's halal and allowed, permissible. But other than that, then of course the one should refer to the ulama for further details.
I see. Shaykhna, please, is there any difference between, I'll get more questions coming, Batri and Rafidi, and what are the differences?
Basically, both of these terms there are narrations with this regard, but there's no time for me to elaborate and bring the hadith and explain. But in overall, briefly, that Rafidi is the one which means rejecter, the one who rejects the enemies of Allah Azza wa Jal, the one who rejects the enemies of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and the one who rejects the enemies of Ahlul Bayt Alayhim Salam. That's why they are called Rafida, because they reject the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, those who killed Ahlul Bayt Alayhim Salam. And the Batri is for those who, ala kulli hal, they try to do mix and match between loving Ahlul Bayt and respecting the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. So encouraging people not to do la'in, not to do tabarra from them. No, let's respect them, let's respect the other faiths and sects and so forth, yes, the leaders and so forth. That's Batri, the one who mixes, tries to come up with a new faith and aqidah that no, we have to respect the other people's leaders, we shouldn't curse them, we shouldn't speak against them, and let's have unity in this meaning, in this context, that we respect other people's leaders, and this means that you have to avoid even establishing and holding Ashura, because you are cursing Yazid.
There you go.
Who is son of Muawiyah. They both were Khalifa, so-called Khalifa. Then you have to stop commemorating Ashura as well in this case. And not only those who established the Khilafah, the so-called Khilafah in Saqifa.
Yes, Yes, indeed. Sheikhna, are we from the WhatsApp or from one of the viewers? Are we allowed to use healing crystals and sage? Are you aware of healing crystals, Sheikhna? Have you ever seen them before?
Don't have much information about.
Inshallah, in the next episode we'll do a bit more research on that, but it's a science of itself, I believe. Sheikhna, Assalamu Alaikum. What's the reward of establishing a obligatory salah next to the dhari of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, if one gets a chance, or any of the imams? And also, what about other people, like etc., or the zari of Hur, Zayd ibn Ali, etc., etc.? So, establishing an obligatory prayer in the dhari of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein or the other imam, or all those shaheed fighting who died in the way of Islam and of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they have shrines that we visit. For example, Sayyid Muhammad in Balad, we go to Hazrat Khur outside on the outskirts of Karbala and so forth. So establishing your prayers, your obligatory prayers there, what is the reward?
In overall, some of the narrations mention about visiting specific shrine, you will get this reward and such like. In overall, in Kitab Kamil al-Ziyarat, the hadith mentions that there are 70,000 angels in the shrine and the tomb of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, around the shrine. Of course, they worship Allah Azza wa Jalla there, and they pray as well there, they do ibadah as well, and their salah, their pray is equal to 1,000 salah in which a human believer would pray there. So each salah of the angel equals to 1,000 of reward of salah of a believing man or woman in that sacred location. And they would give their reward of this salah to the visitors of Al-Hussein alayhi salam, to the Zawar.
I see, excellent. Sheikhna, Assalamu Alaikum, again from one of the viewers. Should one prefer to go to Hajj or Ziyarah first if you want to go to both? Also, thank you for answering my question. Remember my family and me in your prayers, inshallah. I'm not going to mention the name because we don't do it, but for the person asking the question, inshallah we can remember her in our prayers, or him. Ziyarah, Hajj, which one should they go to first, having the opportunity to do both?
I believe we answered this question from last episode, but I would repeat it again, that the narration states, of course, if it was the mustahab ziyarah, because the wajib remains wajib, you cannot opt out and avoid the wajib hajj. You have to go. If you're mustati' and capable of going hajj, you must go. Yes. It's like salah, it's like fasting. You can't ignore it and abandon it because you're going to the ziyarah and so forth. But the hadith says that your ziyarah to Al-Hussein alayhi salam is equal to 10 hajj and umrah. So a great reward for the one who visits Imam Hussein salamullah alayhi in Karbala. You get the thawab of hajj and umrah, and 10, and even some narrations more than that. Ala kulli hal. So of course the ziyarah to Hussein salamullah alayhi is more rewarding, but we shouldn't neglect umrah and hajj as well.
Sheikhna, a question from one of the viewers. What is the ruling on saying Assalamu Alaikum to disbelievers?
Some ulama would say that you should only say Alaikum. You shouldn't say Salam. Salam is only for the mu'mineen and the believing individuals. So you would reply Alaikum, or you would say hi or hello and so forth.
Another question, Sheikhna. We usually receive wedding invitation cards which have the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala written on them. What should we do with them, as we're not allowed to throw them away? Can we put them in recycling?
That's the best option.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it permissible for a female to ride a horse, even though this can lead to losing her virginity?
Well, it's to be honest, an issue in which it's been discussed, and even riding the bike, for example, and so forth. That if it's in front of the men, non-mahram men, then there's a problem, because now she's gonna basically, in somehow, by riding the horse or even a bike, for example, in somehow will show her beauty in some parts of the body, for example. Even if she's wearing clothes, for example.
Yes.
You know, it's a moving.
The figure will show her figure.
Exactly. Yeah. So one should prevent unless there's no men, for example, in that place. But على كل حال, the issue should be, talk to the experts with this regard, because, with regards to the virginity and so forth.
I see. Excellent. Sheikh, now, if you remember, there was a video that we played and they were discussing about, is this my first rak'ah or second rak'ah of the Fajr prayer? And when in doubt with the 2 rak'at prayer, you start from the beginning again, you should start again. What if you have doubt in the 3rd and 4th rak'ah? If it's like Dhuhr or Asr or Isha prayer. So the viewers have asked, if it's the 3rd or 4th rak'ah and you have doubt, is this my 3rd or is this my 4th? What should one do in that situation?
Yeah, in 3rd and 4th you would do, you would assume it's the 4th, and you would sit down and do the tashahhud and taslim, and then you stand up straight away to do salat al-ihtiyat or rak'at al-ihtiyat, 1 rak'ah, to fulfill any shortage from this salah.
Sheikh, now one of the questions come in, can I keep a cat, hamster and rabbit in my house?
I mean, overall for the cat it is allowed على كل حال. For the hamster and rabbit, I'm not sure if it's, I mean, what we had issue is with the dog, for example, because it's
the najis.
Yeah, and overall there isn't an hurma or forbiddenness with these animals.
Sheikh, if a dog licks my body or clothes, how should I purify it?
Just under the water, running water.
Does cat hair affect one's prayers? That's a really good question, because we know that dog hair makes your salah batil and you're going to have to redo your prayers. But with cat hair it's a little bit different, isn't it, Sheikh?
It's almost the same. They have to remove it before they pray, so they have to clean their clothes before they start praying.
Excellent. Sheikh, now, if one was to, I masturbated in Ramadan and I did not know that masturbation is haram, how should I go about my previous fasts? So someone had broken their fast without knowing that this invalidates the fast, plus there's a kafara to pay for it, because it's one of those major invalidators or major sins to do while you're fasting. They weren't aware of it. Do those still apply to the person, or can they just perform one qada fast and that will be enough?
I mean, it depends. Did they know the hukum or they didn't know the hukum? That's the issue. If they know this is haram, that's going to invalidate their fast, and they did it, then of course there's a kafaratul jama'. They have to fast 2 months continuously, and pay 60 paupers or 60 per person of food, and of course to make up that mistake. Ahsant.
Sheikhna, what's the meaning of Sayyid?
Sayyid is the one who is from the lineage of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his pure family. Then he is of course a Sayyid and Hashimi as well. Of course we have Hassani, we have Husseini from different lineage, but they all end up to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Ahsant. Sheikhna, do Shias believe in the coming of Dajjal?
There is something mentioned about Dajjal, yes. There's mentioned ala kulli hal. Of course, I mean, these are some of them are the signs of the Dhuhur, the Sufyani invading, Iraq, attacking certain cities, killing people, and so forth. These are part of them. Some of them are alamat, certain alamat and signs of the Dhuhur, and some uncertain alamat.
Sheikhna, in the manqabats, there's instruments used, but isn't musical instruments haram? So with qasida, qasa'id, and also latmiat and so forth, religious, you could say songs, you could say in a way. Sometimes, unfortunately, there's instruments used in them, sometimes not. When instruments are used, depending on the instrument also, but when instruments are used, is this acceptable or not?
I mean, ulama are divided into 2 different opinions. One says that all types of the musical instruments are haram and forbidden, so one should not use any type of music in any field, be it sports, training, manqaba, Quran, and so forth. Some would say that if that music is not a type of the amusing or amusement or enjoying or like the songs and so forth, then it's allowed.
That's it. Sheikh, now we're going to go to a small video you guys have been watching over the last couple of episodes. We have these small Ahkam SOS clips. We've got one sent in today, inshallah, and we'll discuss it after the video.
Salam Alaikum. How are you, brother? How are you doing? You good? I heard it's your birthday, so I got you a little gift.
No way.
Yeah.
Thank you, bro.
Some cologne.
Perfume, yeah?
Yeah, mashallah. Cologne.
Wait, whoa. It has alcohol in it, bro.
Oh.
Is that najis or is it pure?
I don't know. We need to check.
Yes, there was the video, Sheikhna. Alcohol used in perfumes. We know that alcohol is najis, especially ethanol, which is the one that's we found in alcoholic drinks and can intoxicate you. Is this the same sort of alcohol that's used in perfumes and so forth? Does it make it najis for us to use and wear?
There are two types of alcohol. Industrial alcohol, which is used in soaps, shampoos, and even perfumes, which is pure and halal. There's no issue with it. But the second type of alcohol, which is intoxicant alcohol, that is of course haram and impure and najis to be used.
I see.
So the one in perfumes can be used, yes.
I see. Speaking of najasa, Sheikhna, if blood falls into the food, is like, let's say I'm cooking food and I've got some water that's boiling or something like that, and if a drop of blood falls into it, does it make it najis? It's still, it's hot, it's boiling. If there's any bacteria or anything like that, it'll most likely get killed. So does a drop of blood make a boiling food najis?
Yes, I mean the whole food becomes najis and impure, as well as the containing pan as well. That becomes impure as well. However, the heat and fire would not render this food pure and tahir, because water is what would make the najis pure and tahir, and not fire and heat.
Sheikhna, a question from the WhatsApp. What are the conditions for validity of an oath? Qasam, nadhr, something like that.
I mean, you have to make sure that you do it properly in terms of the verbal. Let's say, if you want to do another, you have to say lillahi alayya.
Wow.
That if I get this, I'll do this. Or the qasam, wallahi tallahi billahi, for example. Then becomes qasam shar'i, in which you have to fulfill, otherwise you have to pay kafara. Giving 10 poor people, for example, sadaqah and so forth.
I see. Sheikhna, a question from the WhatsApp. If an unmarried lady and man have had personal relations, physical relations, are they allowed to enter a marriage contract, nikah, with each other? So these two, maybe perform zina or something beforehand, they weren't married. Can them two now get married? Or is there some Islamic law to say no, they cannot?
Ala kulli hal, we have to refer back and to see, the act of zina itself is forbidden. It's a haram issue. The one should actually perform the aqd before the act of
ideally
intercourse. Yeah, that's not a proper way of, ala kulli hal, of reaching each other in this way. So the one should make sure that they do the aqd before this act, so to avoid the haram. So the one would not regret afterwards.
Yes. But is there anything to stop them from doing the aqd after?
Ala kulli hal, we have to see, inshallah.
Okay, we'll discuss that later. Sheikhna, is it permissible to play games of chance of all kinds on electronic machines, computers, without betting or with betting?
Many of the ulama mentioned that it is not permissible even on computer, so one should avoid.
Fantastic. What is the ruling on pills that women take in order to onset their monthly menstrual cycles, so one can perform the rituals of Hajj or enter shrine of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein or one of the other Imma, for example? So they know that their menstrual cycle is about to begin. They take some sort of pills or medication to delay it in order for them to perform ibadat, you could say. Is this acceptable in Islam?
Yes, it's allowed. Yes.
MashaAllah. Is cream a barrier to water reaching the skin? And if so, should it be removed prior to wudu and ghusl? I'm assuming they're talking about moisturizing cream or creams used to treat wounds and so forth, an antiseptic cream or whatever. When we apply cream to our body, Sheikhna, some are permeable, some are not permeable. Some will allow water, some will not. Should we actually just remove it and perform our wudu ghusl, or can we actually perform our wudu and ghusl on top and the water will go through, it's no problem?
If it becomes like a mass and barrier between the water and the skin, so it prevents the reach of water to the skin, and of course it has to be removed for the wudu and ghusl. Otherwise, there's no issue with it.
More questions coming in, mashallah. Is looking at one's mother's face ibadat?
There is something mentioned that another wajh al-walidain ibadah, something like that. To look at the parent's face is ibadah, but I'm not sure about the hadith. It could be a statement.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I would like to ask Sheikh if rainwater is impure, or if it is only light drizzle of rain and it's wet one's clothes only a little bit, will it cause the clothes to be impure? So rainwater, is it impure? And if it drizzles, if you find it on your clothes, does it make your clothes najis?
One of the purifiers is the rain of water, in which if it falls on, let's say, a rug or a carpet and it's najis, it would make it tahir. But it has to be enough water coming in a way that it comes out from this rug or clothes or carpet to make it clean.
Sheikh, another question from the WhatsApp. What would be the best initial course of action if one wakes up and the time of Dhuhr Asr Salah has gone, but the time of Maghrib has not come yet? Should we pray a normal prayer as soon as possible, or pray Qadha nonetheless? Is praying Qadha ASAP, as in you have to pray your Qadha as soon as possible, or is that better than praying it later, as it does not matter, i.e. Qadha is Qadha? So I'm assuming, okay, so this person has, the time of Dhuhr Asr has gone, but the time of Maghrib hasn't come yet. So should they perform their Salah then, or not? And also, if it has gone Qadha, are you allowed to pray your Qadha at a later time, or should you pray as soon as possible?
I mean, the one can start praying the Qadha first, for example, and then pray Maghrib Isha as well. So yeah, you can start with the Qadha first. There's no issue with it. Just to make sure that you fulfilled the wajib before you start the second wajib, in which is ada, and you have time to pray it.
Okay.
So you can do so.
Sheikhna, what is the difference between khums and zakat?
Khums basically is about paying the excess of whatever you gain from profits, income, salary, and wages, and so forth, gifts, whatever you gain in overall that is known to be surplus in your annual income.
Expenditure.
Whatever is left over, unspent, then you have to pay khums on it. Zakat is on specific items, such as if you have cattle, if you have wheat and barley, dates, if you have gold and silver, and they reach a threshold, an amount, then you pay zakat and khums, zakat on those items.
No problem. Sheikhna, is it permissible to use the Shia Imams in charitable projects while there are tens of thousands of believers who are in need of bread, clothes, etc.? Is it permissible to use the Shia Imams in charitable projects? Well, I don't really understand the question. I'm assuming they're saying to spend money on the Imams or the shrines when there are so many other Shias all over the world that are in need of these money, bread, clothing, etc. I'm assuming that's the question. Whoever asked that question, if that's not, please send in the question again and clarify whether you want it's to do with using Shia Imams' names or so forth for charitable projects, or is it for the shrines? I'm assuming it's for the shrines, Sheikhna.
In overall, those who are feeding the poor people in the world are these shrines-related projects, be it Husseyniyat, Imam Barga, or even the shrines of Ahl Bayt, in which feeding millions every year between Karbala and Najaf, between Karbala and Baghdad and other cities, feeding millions. Husseyniyat, who attends the Husseyniyah? Many of them are poor people who sit down and eat in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Iran, Iraq, majority who attend these majalis are poor people, middle class, lower class. So these majalis, these shrines are actually feeding and helping people in terms of the food. Even some of them have projects for the orphans. They clothe them, for example. The food baskets, for example. And alhamdulillah, we can see this. So you can't really say that let's stop spending on these majalis and shrines and spend on poor people. No, let's have two different capitals and budgets. One for the shrines and one for the poor people around the world.
Inshallah. Sheikhna, wish we could. Oh, so many questions coming in, everything's moving. I do apologize. Can women do wudu or ghusl without removing their nail polish? Now, in recent times, Sheikhna, I've seen halal nail polish where there's some nail polish that underwater they come straight off, and there are other ones that are semi-permeable where they actually allow the water to go through the nail polish and touch the nail. So in recent, this is new technology and new designs of nail polish. Traditionally, nail polish is meant to be waterproof. So can a lady perform wudu with her nail polish on?
The main condition is that she must make sure that when she do the wudu or ghusl, the water reaches to the skin or to the nails. That's the condition. If they're certain, bismillah. Otherwise, they have to make sure that they remove all these nail polish and then apply the wudu or the ghusl on it.
Sheikhna, what is the ruling about watching films with a sexual nature or has indecent content?
It's all forbidden, absolutely.
Okay. Sheikhna, if one is in the state of Janaba and doubts whether or not he has performed the ghusl while he has already performed the Salah, what is he to do?
Well, the Salah that he prayed afterwards, the Salah is permissible and allowed because he prayed the Salah with certainty that he is pure. But now on, because now he's got a new doubt that I may have not done the ghusl, in this case he needs to do, or she needs to do the ghusl for the next coming Salah.
Okay. Sheikh, according to His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sayyid Hakim, rahmatullah alayh, if I work in a shop and as a cashier, and someone comes and says, here's the money for the goods and keep the change, am I allowed to keep the change for myself, or must that be taken towards the business and the company?
The Sayyid mentions that, rahimahullah, that if the money or the tips given to you personally, then it's yours. It's very clear that this is yours for you,
yes,
and you can take it. But if the shopkeeper or the owner says that whatever comes in is for the shop, then you can't do anything. Or the intention of the customer that I pay this tips or extra money for the shop, then of course the one can't take it.
I see. We're going to go to a short break. Inshallah, join us after the break as we continue more discussions here on Ahkam SOS. See you after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
I have a question regarding keeping pictures of scholars.
Is it permissible to plant trees by or over
Islam
the
establish
graves?
based on peace and
Is it
non-violence?
permissible to collect donations for charity projects from
Is it permitted to consume canned food imported from non-Muslim countries?
Is there an issue for men looking at non-Muslim women?
To have your questions answered live, call in on +44 2035 150199 or WhatsApp us on +44 7415 092155. Alternatively, you can also email us on ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. If you've got a question that you'd like to send in, please send it in via the WhatsApp, the email address, or give us a call in the studio 0203 515 0199. Inshallah, myself and the Sheikh will be able to discuss and answer your questions. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sheikhna, is the wash of visiting Imam Hussein alayhi salam a substitute for wudu? Now, His Eminence, the Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Bashir al-Najafi, he discusses this. What does he say?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The Sheikh mentions that it is not a replacement for wudu because it is a recommended ghusl. You cannot do wudu with the recommended ghusl. Some ulama would allow it in some of the aghsal, but in overall, many of the ulama would not allow the recommended ghusl to be instead of wudu, in other words.
I see. Sheikh, a quick question from the WhatsApp. Can you perform Salah straight after doing ghusl, or do you need to do wudu?
Yes, for the ghusl janaba or the ghusl wajib, you have to just do the Salah afterwards. No wudu is required or even allowed. You can't do wudu on the ghusl of janaba, because this ghusl by itself is a replacement for wudu. So you can't add another wudu on it. So you have to pray straight away after the ghusl janaba without wudu.
I see. Sheikh, is it permissible for an individual to sell $1,000 for $1,100 of the same currency to another person as part of a selling or lending transaction?
Because it's the same currency, it's not permissible in this case, no. That's going to be riba in this case.
Okay. Sheikh, is it permissible to buy an apartment which has not been built yet but is on the drawing board, and the buyer will receive it 5 years later, say when the block is finished?
Yes, it is permissible. At least you have something on the ground in which they will be building that apartment on it. So yes, it is permissible transaction.
Question here from the WhatsApp, Sheikhna. Is Salah valid with a t-shirt on? This is for a male. So if a male is wearing a t-shirt, I'm assuming they're wearing trousers as well, but if a male is wearing a t-shirt, as in some of the forums are showing, is the Salah valid?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is it permissible to take out a student loan which is given to students for high school and university education? Needless to say, this loan must be returned with interest in some countries, and normally a student does not have alternative means to pursue education without the loan.
If they are compelled, then there's no objection, because they are compelled to pay the interest on the loan, and paying the interest on the loans, it is allowed only in special cases and compelling situations, basically.
Sheikh, a question here from the WhatsApp, and that is, while one prays and after sujood one stands for qiyam and their feet goes a little out of the prayer mat, can I bring them back to the prayer mat, or is this not permissible? So I'm assuming as they do sujood and they stand up and into qiyam, and sometimes they're in a different position, do they continue to pray in that position, or can they take a step forward, back on, reposition themselves and continue the prayer?
If they are saying the dhikr, they have to stop saying the dhikr.
Okay.
So they stabilize themselves and they continue the salah.
Excellent. Good question here, Sheikh. Now, what age are we under our parents' rule? For example, if my parents are not allowing to meet friends of my own gender for unnecessary reasons, can I meet them without telling them at the age of 20 if I live with my parents?
In overall, to hurt and to harm your parents, this is not allowed, in a way that you know that you're gonna harm them, you're gonna hurt them. So that is not allowed. إيذاء أذية الوالدين. But in overall, the one should communicate with the parents to try to على كل حال convince them that I want to go to a specific trip with my friends, for example. It's a halal trip, there's no haram involved, for example. Even some have issues, some parents, that how could their young children, or let's say even youth, to leave them and go to, let's say, to Hajj or Umrah or Ziyarah with the group, for example. So they have to come in a situation, in a على كل حال, a respectful manner, that they won't harm and hurt their parents على كل حال.
Sheikh, is it permissible for a Muslim man to marry a non-Muslim woman who is still married to a non-Muslim man? Is there an iddah period for her when she separates from her non-Muslim husband? What is the period of the iddah? Is it permissible to have physical relations with her during the time when she is in the iddah period from her non-Muslim husband? If she embraced Islam, how long will her iddah period be if she intends to marry a Muslim man? So we'll go there step by step. So we'll start with the beginning. Is it permissible for a Muslim man to marry a non-Muslim woman who is still married to a non-Muslim man?
The marriages, Islam would basically accept their marriages or respect their marriages. So if they are, let's say, Christians or Jewish couple, then of course we have to respect their marriage. They are married.
Yes.
I think there's a narration which says لكل قوم nikah or something like that. That every community, nation, they have their own nikah and marriage.
Yes.
So you can't really penetrate that and and somehow get married to a woman who is married to somebody else.
What about the iddah period? I mean, we have a iddah period of 3 cycles, I believe it is. Do we uphold that Islamic iddah period, or if they have a shorter one, can we use their version or not?
The idea of the iddah is to make sure that she is pure from any pregnancy and so forth. So that is على كل حال to avoid. I mean, you can't get married straight to a woman who has just divorced, for example.
Just in case she's pregnant.
She might be pregnant, for example, and so forth. So the iddah is there to make sure that she is pure, her womb is pure from any expected fetus and so forth.
I heard someone, sorry, another question. I heard someone say someone's ziyarah is batil if they don't pay khums there. Is that true?
I mean, with regard to the ziyarah, I haven't heard such a thing before, to be honest. But in overall, ziyarah is mustahab for the one to do so, and the khums is wajib. So you have to make sure that you fulfill the wajib. As I've said before, for the hajj wajib, you have to go for the hajj wajib if you're capable, you have the means and the money. And you can't neglect and ignore it. So try to fulfill your wajib, and beside it, do the mustahab acts and so forth.
Ahsan. Assalamu alaikum. Is buying cryptocurrency halal? Yes, it is, but please check with your marja. As Sheikh mentioned before, Sheikh Zakufiyad has a fatwa against it. That's from the YouTube channel. Also, Sheikhna, Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to know that why do Shias join their prayers together? Why can we pray Zuhr and Asr together and Maghrib and Isha together?
There's a narration in the books of Ahlul Sunnah that the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he joined the two Salah without any excuse, without rain, without any excuse. So he did so when he was in Medina sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in their books as well. So alhamdulillah, we have our own evidence and hadith with this regard. There's no issue with it, but in their books mentioned as well.
Ahsan. Thank you very much, Sheikhna. Thank you to all of you for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, please send it in via the WhatsApp, the email address. If you're watching via YouTube or Facebook Live, just put the question in the comment section. They will go towards our technical team and they will forward all your questions towards us. You can ask a question on any topic. There's nothing too silly or too taboo. We don't need to know your name or where you're asking from. Just send in your question. If it is in the lines with a certain marja, please let us know, put the marja's name there, because we do have access to the official offices and the official representatives of majority of our maraja, and the Sheikh will be able to get your question put forward and receive an answer, inshallah. Myself and the Sheikh will be back on Wednesday here on Imam Hussein TV 3 at 6:30. Please keep sending in your questions, and inshallah, I apologize if we didn't answer your question today, but if you send it in, we will answer them on Wednesday's episode, inshallah. 6:30 here on Imam Hussein TV 3. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
IHDRF is proud to announce the launch of its app, My Sadaqah. My Sadaqah is a modern, easy, and interactive way for you to pay your charity. Your Sadaqah can be transferred instantly and directly start helping orphans. Furthermore, you can donate to different projects such as clothing orphans, supplying clean water, heating fuel for the winter, and feeding the hungry. When you pay your Sadaqah, it will be used to feed, clothe, and school orphans. Our app is accessible via the App Store and Google Play Store. Download today and pay your Sadaqah on My Sadaqah.
This tear that comes out of the eye is an expression of the love and the mahabba and the mawadda for Imam Hussein, which is in the heart. Therefore, the tear is an expression of this firmly deep-rooted love that lies in the heart. Allah